A young billionaire goes to the hospital to pray for his daughter in a coma. A homeless girl says, "I can wake her up." What happens next is unbelievable. The clock on the hospital wall reads 9:47 p.m. Elliot Granger sits in the chair beside the bed, where his 5-year-old daughter has been sleeping for 4 days. Ivy lies there, in the middle of the white bed, connected to wires and tubes that make strange noises. Her chest rises and falls slowly, very slowly. Elliot holds the girl's doll, an old doll, with yellow hair and a pink dress that has been washed so many times it's almost white. Her name is Bella. Ivy invented that name when she was 3 and never let go of the doll. Not even to sleep. Now Bella is in his hands, and Ivy doesn't know. "Mr. Granger," the nurse enters the room. "It's time." The hospital closes visitors at 10 p.m. Elliot looks at the clock and sighs. Every day the same thing. He arrives at 7 a.m. when visiting hours open, stays all day with Ivy, and at 10 p.m. he has to leave. 15 hours a day by his daughter's side, but it's not enough, it's never enough. "Just a few more minutes," he asks. "You know I can't allow it. Those are hospital rules." Elliot stands up slowly. 4 days following this routine. 4 days going back and forth from the hospital, sleeping little at home, thinking only of Ivy. 4 days praying for her to wake up. "Bye-bye, princess," he whispers, kissing his daughter's forehead. "Daddy will be back early tomorrow." As always. In the elevator, Elliot presses the ground floor button and closes his eyes. How can he go home and pretend everything is normal? How can he sleep knowing Ivy is here, alone, in a coma? Guilt has gnawed at him from the first day. He was the one who caused all this. Ivy was playing in the backyard while he took an urgent call from the office. His company was closing a major deal. Millions of dollars depended on that conversation. Ivy wanted to show him a drawing she had made. He signaled for her to wait. "Just 5 more minutes, princess," he said, covering his phone. "Daddy needs to sort this out." But it wasn't 5 minutes, it was an hour. And when he finally hung up the phone, he found Ivy unconscious on the patio floor, her doll, Bella, lying beside her. Doctors said it was sudden cardiac arrest. Unexplained. These things sometimes happen with children, but Elliot knows the truth. Ivy had been trying to get his attention for days. She said she didn't feel well, that her chest hurt. He always replied it was just tiredness, that they'd talk later, always later. There was always something more urgent to deal with. Now she's in a coma, and there is no more later. The driver is waiting at the hospital entrance, and as always, "Home, Mr. Granger." "Home?" Elliot replies, getting into the car. During the ride, he looks out the window and sees the city functioning normally. Restaurants open, people walking, life happening. As if the world didn't know Ivy Granger was in a coma. As if nothing had changed, but for him, everything had changed. He arrives home and the first thing he does is go up to Ivy's room. Everything is as she left it 4 days ago. Drawings scattered on the desk, toys on the floor, the bed unmade because she rushed out for breakfast. Elliot sits on the small bed and picks up one of the drawings from the desk. It's a family, a tall man, a small girl, and a doll. Beneath it, in shaky child's handwriting, it reads, "Me and Daddy and Bella." Tears begin to stream down his face. Ivy drew them together. But when was the last time they were truly together? When was the last time he truly paid attention to her? He remembers his wife. Sarah died when Ivy was 2, cancer. In her last months, she begged him to spend more time at home, more time with them. "Ivy needs her dad," she'd say. "I might not be here forever." Elliot always promised he would change, but he never did. There was always an important meeting, an urgent deal, an opportunity he couldn't miss. When Sarah died, he promised himself he would be both father and mother to Ivy. He would give her everything she needed. He worked so hard he forgot to be a father, and now Ivy is paying the price. Elliot lies on his daughter's bed and hugs the pillow that still smells like her. He cries until he's exhausted, until he has no more tears. Then he picks up his phone and cancels all meetings for the next day, and the day after, and the entire week. Nothing else matters but Ivy. The next morning, he's back at the hospital at 7 sharp. The same nurse from the night before greets him at the reception. "Good morning, Mr. Granger," punctual as always. "Good morning," he replies, heading for the elevator. In the room, Ivy remains in the same position, motionless, breathing slowly. Elliot sits in the chair beside the bed and takes his daughter's small hand. It's cold, as always. "Hi, Princess," he whispers. "Daddy's back like I promised." He places the doll Bella next to Ivy on the bed. "Bella's back too. She said she dreamed about you all night." Elliot kneels beside the bed and clasps his hands. He does what he's done every day since the accident. "God," he whispers, closing his eyes. "I come here every day asking for the same thing. Please, let my daughter wake up. I know I don't deserve it. I know I've been a terrible father, but she doesn't deserve to pay for my mistakes. Please, hear me. Please, make her wake up." He remains kneeling for long minutes, praying in silence, pleading for a miracle. He does this every day, several times a day. He prays when he arrives in the morning. He prays at lunchtime. He prays before leaving at night. "Mr. Granger." The doctor enters the room. Elliot quickly stands up. "Doctor, how is she?" "Stable, as always. No significant changes." Elliot feels his heart clench. 4 days and no improvement. No sign that Ivy will wake up. "Doctor, I wanted to ask, is there anything I can do? Any new treatment? Any specialist?" The doctor shakes his head. "Mr. Granger, we are doing everything possible. Sometimes, in these cases, we can only wait." "Wait how long?" "We don't know. It could be days, weeks, months." The doctor doesn't finish the sentence, but Elliot understands. "Or it could be never." "John, I won't give up on her," Elliot says, his voice firm. "Never." "I know, sir. You've been very dedicated. You're here every day." The doctor leaves, and Elliot returns to the chair. He takes Ivy's hand and squeezes it gently. "Ivy, I know you can't hear me, but I need to talk," he whispers. "It was my fault. All of this was my fault. I should have paid attention when you said you weren't feeling well. I should have put down the phone and taken care of you." The words come out with difficulty. "I always thought working hard made me a good father. I thought giving money, buying expensive things, paying for the best schools, I thought that was love, but it wasn't. Love is time. Love is being present. And I never was." The machines continue to hum. Beep, 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 like a mechanical heart marking the time he lost with his daughter. "Please, Ivy," he whispers, squeezing her hand. "Please, wake up. Give me another chance. I promise I'll be different. I promise I'll be the father you deserve." The hours pass slowly. Nurses come and go, check the machines, make notes. Elliot doesn't leave the chair. He eats little, speaks only when necessary to the medical staff. All the rest of the time he stays there, holding his daughter's hand and talking to her. He tells stories he invented, talks about plans for when she wakes up, asks for forgiveness for years of absence. Sometimes he prays aloud, sometimes in silence, always begging God to give him a second chance. When the clock strikes 9:30 at night, Elliot knows he needs to prepare to leave. Another day with no changes, another day with no hope. "Bye, Princess," he whispers, kissing Ivy's forehead. "Daddy will be back early tomorrow. And he'll keep coming back until you wake up, no matter how long it takes." On the way home, he thinks of Sarah. If she were alive, what would she say about all this? Probably that it was his fault for not paying attention to the signs. Probably that he was finally learning what it meant to be a father, but too late. At home, Elliot can barely eat. He takes a quick shower and goes straight to bed. He needs a few hours of sleep to have the strength to return to the hospital tomorrow. But sleep doesn't come easily. He keeps thinking about Ivy, alone in that cold room, connected to machines. Does she know he's trying? Does she feel him there every day? Can she hear him when he prays for her? On the 5th day, the routine repeats. Elliot arrives at the hospital at 7 a.m., sits beside Ivy's bed, takes her hand, and begins another day of vigil and prayer. "Good morning, Princess," he whispers. "Today marks 5 days you've been sleeping. Daddy's getting worried." He kneels beside the bed. "God, I know I've been asking for the same thing every day, but I need to keep asking. Please, let my daughter wake up. I promise I'll be the father she always needed. I promise I'll never put work before her again." He remains kneeling for long minutes, eyes closed, praying with all the strength he has. It's all he can do. It's all he knows how to do. When he opens his eyes, he sees he's no longer alone in the room. A girl stands in the doorway. She must be about 8 or 9 years old, with dark, messy hair, dirty, old clothes. She's barefoot. "How did you get in here?" Elliot asks, quickly standing up. The girl doesn't answer right away. She looks at Ivy, then at Elliot, then at Ivy again. "Chow, she's been sleeping for a long time," the girl says, entering the room slowly. "Who are you? How did you get past security?" The girl approaches the bed. "My name is Marley," she says, simply. "And I can wake her up." Elliot stops breathing for a second. The girl speaks with such certainty, such calm, that for a moment he almost believes her. "How?" he asks, his voice barely audible. Marley looks directly at him, her dark eyes filled with something Elliot can't identify. "Sometimes people get lost inside themselves," she says. "They need someone to show them the way back." "You're just a child. How can you—" "I know what it's like to be lost," Marley interrupts. "For I know what it's like when no one sees you, no one hears you, no one cares. Ivy is feeling that way now." Elliot feels a tightness in his chest. The girl's words make sense in a way he didn't expect. "But she's not alone," he says. "I'm here every day." Marley shakes her head. "You're here now, but she remembers all the times you weren't. That's what she's hiding from." The words are like a stab to Elliot's heart, because they are true, completely true. "What can I do?" he asks, desperate. Marley moves even closer to the bed. "Let me try first," she says. "Then we'll see." Before Elliot can answer, Marley climbs onto a chair to reach the bed. She extends her small hand and gently touches Ivy's hand. "Imagine we're playing," she whispers, so softly that Elliot barely hears it. "The day is beautiful." For a second, nothing happens. Elliot is ready to say it won't work, that she's just a child talking nonsense. But then he sees it. Ivy's hand moves, just a little, just enough for her fingers to close slightly, as if trying to hold Marley's hand. But it moves. Elliot approaches the bed so fast he almost trips. "Ivy," he whispers. "Ivy, can you hear me?" But Ivy doesn't respond. Her hand relaxes again, returning to its previous position, as if nothing had happened. Marley withdraws her hand and gets down from the chair. "It's the first sign," she tells Elliot. But she's still scared. Scared of what? Of waking up and finding out you're not really here, that it's just a dream. Elliot feels tears in his eyes. "But I am here. I come here every day." "You need to prove it to her," Marley says, "and it's going to take a while." The nurse rushes into the room. "Mr. Granger, I saw on the monitor that there was a movement." She stops when she sees Marley. "Who is this girl? How did she get in here?" Elliot looks at Marley, then at the nurse. His head is confused, full of questions and hope at the same time. She helped my daughter," he says. The nurse frowns. "Sir, children cannot be here unsupervised." "I'm going to call security." "No," Elliot says, louder than he intended. "Please, let her stay a bit longer." Marley shakes her head. "I have to go," she says, heading for the door, "but I'll be back tomorrow." "Wait," Elliot calls out to her. "How do I know you'll really come back?" Marley stops at the door and looks at him. "Because Ivy needs me," she says. "And you do too." And then she leaves, leaving Elliot alone with his daughter again. But something has changed. It's not just the fact that Ivy's hand moved. It's something deeper. A hope that wasn't there before. For the first time in 5 days, Elliot feels that perhaps there's still a chance. Maybe God has heard his prayers. Maybe he sent a strange girl to show that there's still hope. He kneels beside the bed and takes Ivy's hand again. "God, thank you," he whispers. "Thank you for sending someone to help us. Please, let Marley come back tomorrow. And please, help my daughter remember that I'm here. That I'll always be here." When it's time to leave at 10 p.m., Elliot kisses Ivy's forehead as he always does. "Bye, princess," he whispers. "I'll be back tomorrow. And maybe Marley will too. Maybe tomorrow you'll move again." In the car, on the way home, Elliot feels something he hasn't felt in days. Hope. Ivy's hand moved. It was small, but it was real. And it was because of a strange girl who appeared out of nowhere and said she could help. For the first time since the accident, Elliot goes to sleep believing that Ivy can wake up, believing that his prayers are being heard, believing there's still time to be the father she deserves. Elliot arrives at the hospital the next day at 7 a.m., as always. He spent all night thinking about Marley and the movement of Ivy's hand. He slept little, but felt rested for the first time in days, because finally, there is hope. "Good morning, Mr. Granger," the receptionist greets him, punctual as always. "Good morning," he replies, heading for the elevator. In the room, Ivy remains in the same position, but Elliot looks at her with different eyes. Yesterday she moved. She might move again today. "Hi, Princess," he whispers, sitting in the chair beside the bed. "Daddy's back, and I hope Marley comes back too." He takes Ivy's hand and squeezes it gently. He doesn't feel any movement, but he isn't discouraged. "Hi, yesterday was just the beginning." "Good morning, Mr. Granger," the nurse enters the room. "How was your night?" "Better," Elliot replies. "Much better. And that girl, did she come back?" Elliot looks at the door, expecting to see Marley appear at any moment. Not yet, but she said she would. "And sirs, about yesterday?" "Maybe it's not a good idea to let this child in here. We don't know where she came from, what illnesses she might be carrying." "She helped my daughter," Elliot interrupts. Ivy's hand moved when she touched it. The nurse checks the chart. Yes, there was a movement recorded on the monitors, but it could have been a coincidence. Sometimes there are involuntary muscle spasms. "It wasn't involuntary," Elliot says, firm. Ivy reacted when Marley spoke to her. The nurse doesn't argue, but Elliot sees in her face that she doesn't believe him. No one seems to believe him, except him. The hours pass slowly. Elliot pays attention to every sound in the corridor, waiting to see Marley appear at the door. Doctors come and go, ask questions about yesterday's movement, adjust the machines. Some seem more interested, others skeptical. The movement was small, but significant, the head doctor explains. It could indicate that there is neurological activity we weren't detecting before. Does that mean she'll wake up? It means there's a possibility we hadn't considered, but it's still too early to be sure. Elliot accepts the answer. At least they're no longer talking about transferring Ivy elsewhere. At least there's still hope. Lunch arrives and passes. Elliot eats little, as always, but this time it's not from lack of appetite. It's from anxiety. Where is Marley? Why hasn't she appeared yet? The afternoon progresses and Marley doesn't appear. As the hours pass, Elliot becomes more nervous. What if she doesn't come back? What if yesterday was just luck? What if Ivy doesn't move anymore? "Mr. Granger," the nurse tries to converse. "You seem different today, more agitated. I'm waiting for that girl." "Marley." "Sir, perhaps it's best not to get your hopes up. Street children, they come and go, you can't rely on them." The words irritate Elliot. Marley might be a street child, but she helped Ivy. She did something the doctors couldn't do in 5 days. "She'll come back," he says, more to himself than to the nurse. But as the day passes and Marley doesn't appear, Elliot begins to doubt. Maybe the nurse is right. Maybe street children don't have commitments to anyone. At 6 p.m., he tries to do what Marley did yesterday. He touches Ivy's hand and whispers the same words. "Imagine we're playing, the day is beautiful." Nothing happens. He tries again, with more feeling. "Imagine we're playing, Ivy. The day is beautiful and we can do anything we want." Ivy's hand remains still. Elliot tries for an hour, repeating Marley's words, touching Ivy's hand in the same way. But it doesn't work. Without Marley, the words are just words. Without her, there's no magic. When it's time to leave, at 10 p.m., Elliot is disheartened. Another day without Marley. Another day without movement. As if yesterday never happened. "Bye, Princess," he whispers, kissing Ivy's forehead. "I'll be back tomorrow, as always, and I hope Marley comes back too." In the car on the way home, Elliot feels hope diminishing. Maybe the doctors are right. Maybe yesterday's movement was just an involuntary spasm. Maybe Marley is just a confused child who appeared at the right time. At home, he can barely eat dinner. He keeps thinking about Ivy's empty room, the drawings scattered on the desk, the doll Bella now at the hospital. everything waiting for her to come back if she comes back. On the second day without Marley, Elliot wakes up even earlier. He arrives at the hospital at 6:30, waiting at the reception until visiting hours open at 7. "You're early today," the receptionist comments. "Couldn't sleep properly," he replies. In the room, Ivy remains in the same position. No movement, no sign of improvement. The room feels colder without Marley. Emptier. More dead. Elliot sits in the chair and takes his daughter's hand. He feels nothing but cold, motionless skin. "Hi, Princess," he whispers, but his voice doesn't hold the same hope as yesterday. "Daddy's here again." He kneels beside the bed and clasps his hands. "God, I don't understand what happened. Yesterday I thought you had heard my prayers, that you had sent Marley to help us. But she didn't come back. Please, help me understand. Help me know what to do." He remains kneeling for long minutes, but this time the prayer doesn't bring the usual comfort. It only brings more questions and more doubts. The doctors perform new tests on Ivy. They find no signs of improvement since the day before yesterday. The hand movement seems to have been an isolated event, without repetition. It might have just been a muscle spasm, the doctor explains, just as the nurse had said. "It happens sometimes." "But I saw..." She reacted when the girl touched her. "Mr. Granger, I understand you want to believe her, but we cannot base treatment on..." "On what? On hope?" Elliot interrupts, frustrated. "It's all I have left." The doctor sighs. "We will continue monitoring, but you need to prepare for the possibility that there will be no more changes." Elliot doesn't want to prepare for anything. He wants Ivy to wake up. He wants Marley to come back. He wants everything to make sense again. But as the hours pass and Marley doesn't appear, he realizes he lost more than he expected when she left. It's not just the possibility of a miracle that's gone. It's something more subtle, more human. Marley brought life to the room. Curiosity, movement, a presence that made the place feel less like a hospital and more like a place where people live and care for each other. Now, without her, everything returns to being white and cold. Elliot tries to talk to Ivy as he did before Marley appeared. He tells stories, talks about the future, makes promises, but the words come out empty, artificial, as if he were playing the role of a loving father instead of being one. "Ivy, do you remember that day we went to the park?" he begins, but stops immediately. "Which day? Did they ever go to the park together? Or did he always send the nanny to take her?" Elliot realizes he has no real memories to share with his daughter, only regrets and empty promises of a future that may never come. At bedtime, at 10 p.m., Elliot feels more alone than ever. "Bye, Princess," he whispers, but his voice is weak. "I'll be back tomorrow, as always." But this time, he doesn't mention Marley. He doesn't say he hopes she'll come back because he's no longer sure she will. On the third day without Marley, Elliot barely sleeps. He stares at the ceiling, thinking about Ivy alone in the hospital, thinking about the strange girl who appeared and disappeared, thinking about all the prayers that might not be heard. He arrives at the hospital at 7 a.m., as always, but without the anxiety of previous days, without the expectation that something different will happen. "Good morning, Mr. Granger," the nurse greets him. "How was your night?" "As always," he replies, without much enthusiasm. In the room, he sits in the chair beside Ivy's bed and takes her hand, cold and motionless as always. "Hi, Princess," he whispers. "Die another day." He doesn't kneel to pray right away. He doesn't feel like it. He feels as if his prayers aren't reaching anywhere. The hours pass more slowly than ever. Without the hope of seeing Marley appear, without the possibility of another movement from Ivy. The day drags on like the first few days after the accident. Elliot tries to read a book, but he can't concentrate. He tries to work on his laptop, but the words on the screen don't make sense. He tries to talk to Ivy, but he has nothing new to say. Around 3 in the afternoon, he finally kneels beside the bed. "God, I don't know what to do anymore," he whispers. "I thought you had sent Marley to help us, but she disappeared. And Ivy is still the same. I don't understand anything anymore. Please give me a sign, anything, just so I know you're listening." He remains kneeling for long minutes, waiting for some answer, some sign, but nothing comes. Only the sound of the machines and the silence of the room. When he stands up, he feels more lost than ever. That's when he hears footsteps in the corridor. Light footsteps, different from the doctor's and nurse's steps. Elliot lifts his head and sees a small figure at the entrance. Marley is there, dirtier than before, her hair more disheveled, her clothes more torn. As if she had spent 3 days on the street without eating properly, without sleeping properly. "You came back," Elliot says, feeling immense relief. "I said I'd come back," Marley replies, entering the room. "I waited for you. I waited yesterday and the day before. I thought I wouldn't see you anymore." Marley approaches the bed and looks at Ivy. Her expression becomes worried. "She's further away now," she says. "Further away from what? From waking up. The longer she sleeps, the harder it is for her to remember what it's like to be awake." Elliot feels a chill down his spine. Marley's words make sense in a frightening way. "The doctors said the movement the other day might have just been a muscle spasm." "Doctors don't know everything," Marley says, climbing onto the chair beside the bed. "They know about the body, but they don't know about the heart. So you can help her again." Marley looks at Elliot with those dark, serious eyes. "Ivy will wake up, but not because of me." "Because of what, then?" "Because of you. She listens better when it's you talking." Elliot frowns. "I tried talking to her. It didn't work." "I tried doing what you did, but..." "You tried to talk like me," Marley interrupts. "But you're not me. You're her dad. You need to talk like a dad." "I don't know how to talk like a dad," Elliot admits, his voice low. "I was never a real dad to her." Marley studies him for a long moment. "Then tell her about a day you were happy together. The day you remember and smile about." Elliot falls silent. That's the problem. He doesn't remember any such day. He has no happy memories with Ivy because he was always working when she was happy. I don't have memories like that with her," he confesses. "Then tell her about a day you wished you had lived with her," Marley says, as if it were obvious. "A day you imagine and feel happy just thinking about." Elliot pauses to think. A day he wished he had lived with Ivy. A simple, ordinary day, without meetings, without phone calls, without work. Just the two of them, being father and daughter. Can I make it up?" "You won't be making it up," Marley says. "You'll be remembering what could have been. And sometimes that's more real than what actually happened." Elliot approaches the bed, still unsure. "I don't know if it will work." "It will work," Marley says with certainty, "because this time you'll be speaking truly, from the heart." Elliot takes Ivy's hand and closes his eyes for a second, trying to imagine the perfect day he wished he had lived with her. "Guy Vickers," he begins, his voice softer than usual. "Do you remember that Saturday morning? We woke up late and you came into my bed with Bella. You said she was hungry and wanted pancakes." As he speaks, the story becomes real in his mind, real and beautiful. "Then we went to the kitchen and you wanted to help. You climbed onto a chair to reach the counter and made a huge mess. Flour everywhere, eggs on the floor, milk spilled. But I didn't care, because you were laughing. And when you laugh, Ivy, the whole world becomes more beautiful." Elliot's voice becomes firmer, warmer. "Afterwards, we sat on the living room floor to eat the pancakes. You said they tasted like clouds. And we just stayed there playing with Bella, watching cartoons on TV in no hurry to go anywhere. Just the two of us, father and daughter." Elliot stops talking and looks at Ivy. For a second, nothing happens. But then he sees. Her eyelids tremble slightly. "Ivy," he whispers. Her eyelids tremble again, and then, slowly, very slowly, they open just a crack. Enough for Elliot to see a small sliver of his daughter's eyes. "My God," he murmurs, squeezing her hand. Ivy breathes more heavily, as if making an effort to truly wake up. Her eyes close again, but now Elliot knows she's there. She's fighting to come back. For the first time since the accident, he feels like a real father. Not a rich man who pays for everything. Not a successful businessman who buys what his daughter needs. A father. Someone his daughter needs to be happy. Someone who can heal with words and presence, not with money. Marley gets down from the chair and walks to the door. "Where are you going?" Elliot asks. "You don't need me anymore," she says, smiling for the first time since he met her. Now you know how to do it. Wait, Elliot stands up. I want to help you. You don't have a place to stay. You don't have... I have a place, Marley interrupts, where people need me. But you're a child. You need a family, a home. Marley shakes her head. I have a family. All the people I help are my family, and my home is where I'm doing something good. She turns to leave, but stops at the door. Keep talking to her, she says. She's coming back. She just needs to remember it's worth waking up. And then Marley leaves, leaving Elliot alone with Ivy once more. But this time, the room doesn't feel cold or empty. It feels full of possibilities. Elliot returns to the chair beside the bed and takes his daughter's hand again. Where was I? He whispers, smiling. Oh, yes. After the pancakes, we decided to build a fort in the living room with sheets and pillows. And as he speaks, inventing memories he wished he had lived, Ivy breathes more heavily, as if slowly returning from the distant place where she was hiding. As if she finally had a reason to wake up. When it's time to leave, at 10 p.m., Elliot kisses Ivy's forehead and whispers, Bye, Princess. I'll be back tomorrow and we'll continue our conversation. I have many more stories to tell you, stories about what we'll do together when you wake up. In the car, on the way home, Elliot feels something he hasn't felt in a long time. True hope. Not hope in miracles or mysterious girls. Hope in himself. Hope that he can be the father Ivy needs. Hope that there's still time to fix everything. For the first time since the accident, Elliot goes to sleep knowing his prayers were heard. Not in the way he expected, but in the way he needed. God didn't send a miracle. He sent something better. The chance for him to become the father he always should have been. We're seeing some positive neurological signs, explained Dr. Roberts, showing the scans to Elliot. Small responses to stimuli, muscle movements that weren't present before. Will she wake up? Elliot asked, his heart racing. I can't promise, but there's progress. The doctor hesitated. Honestly, I can't explain the cause. Clinically, nothing in the treatment has changed. Elliot just nodded. He knew what had changed, even if the doctors didn't understand. In the room, Marley drew beside Ivy's bed. The atmosphere, once cold and sterile, was now covered with colorful drawings on the walls. A small radio played soft music in the corner. The doctors are surprised, Elliot said as he entered. Marley continued drawing. They only understand the body. They don't understand the heart. In the following days, a routine was established. In the morning, Elliot read to Ivy, not just children's books, but also news, poems, excerpts from novels. In the afternoon, Marley sang or told fantastical stories about enchanted forests and rivers that led to the stars. Look how she reacts when you speak, Marley pointed out one afternoon when Ivy's finger moved in response to her father's voice. Elliot noticed every small sign, an eyebrow slightly raising, eyes moving under closed eyelids, breathing changing rhythm as the stories progressed. She's listening, Nurse May confirmed. In 20 years in this profession, I've never seen a coma patient respond like this to voices and music. On Thursday, Elliot brought a guitar. He hadn't played since college, but he remembered Sarah always saying that music calmed Ivy. I don't know if I still know how to do this, he murmured, adjusting the instrument. Try, Marley encouraged. What matters isn't if it's pretty, it's if it comes from the heart. He played a simple melody, clumsy fingers finding the chords. As he played, he saw Ivy's face react, a slight frown, a subtle movement of her lips. She liked it, Marley affirmed. How do you know? Because I liked it too. On Saturday, something changed in the room's atmosphere. Marley, who always seemed calm, looked at Ivy with intensity. Today is an important day, she told Elliot. Shall I tell her a true story? What kind of story? One that hurts to tell, one that comes from here, she pointed to his chest. Elliot closed the book he was holding. He took a deep breath, looking at his daughter, so small and quiet. Ivy, he began, his voice low and trembling. Do you remember your school play? When you were going to be a tree? He felt the weight of the memory press against his chest. I didn't go. I had a meeting I could have postponed, but I didn't. The nanny said, You kept looking for me in the audience the whole time." Marley watched in silence, her dark eyes fixed on both of them. "I failed you, Ivy," Elliot continued, the words coming out with difficulty. "I was always busy, always thinking about something else." His hand squeezed his daughter's small hand. "But now I'm here, and I'm not leaving anymore." The words hung in the air, simple and raw. Marley approached the other side of the bed, gently touching Ivy's free hand. That's when it happened. Ivy squeezed both hands at the same time. A deliberate movement, a response. "She heard you," Marley whispered. Elliot couldn't hold back his tears. For the first time since the accident, he felt a true connection with his daughter. He wasn't the successful businessman at that moment. He was just a father. The next day, Ivy's heart monitor registered stronger variations. When Elliot spoke, her heart rate responded. When Marley sang, her breathing became deeper. "It's like she's trying to find her way back," the nurse commented. During the afternoon reading, Elliot paused, noticing something extraordinary. A tear rolled from the corner of Ivy's eye. "She's crying," he whispered, incredulous. "She's healing," Marley corrected, touching the other side of the bed. "And so are you." The reconnection between father and daughter was simple, without great revelations or dramatic moments, just honest words, shared time, and constant presence. But it was profoundly true. As the late afternoon light streamed through the window, illuminating the colorful drawings on the walls, Elliot finally understood. It wasn't just Ivy returning from the darkness. It was him too. And in that, there was a magic that no doctor could explain. The days at the hospital took on a new rhythm, slower, more present. Elliot no longer cared about missed meetings or unanswered emails. His phone stayed on silent here, tucked in his pocket. The outside world could wait. Inside, in room 318, only 3 people mattered. Every morning, Elliot arrived at 7 sharp, not because he needed to make the most of every permitted visiting minute, but because he wanted to be there when Ivy felt the first rays of sun through the window. "Good morning, princess," he'd say, kissing his daughter's forehead. "It's a beautiful day outside. Birds are singing in the park." Then he'd open the curtains, turn on the small radio, and sit beside the bed. Not with the anxiety of before, but with the calm of someone who knows they are exactly where they should be. Around 9, Marley would arrive. No one questioned her presence anymore. The doctors and nurses treated her as part of the family, conveniently ignoring the fact that she probably shouldn't be there. "I brought something for you," Marley said one morning, handing Elliot a colorful drawing. It was a portrait of the 3 of them, Elliot, Ivy, and her, holding hands under a bright blue sky. "Is that us?" he asked, smiling. "It's us when Ivy wakes up," Marley replied with the simple certainty only children have. Elliot taped the drawing to the wall, along with the others. The hospital room, once impersonal and cold, now looked like a colorful art studio. Every wall covered with drawings, photos, and cards. Every surface occupied by small treasures, shells Marley found on her wanders, dried flowers Elliot brought from the park, children's books stacked on the nightstand. The hours flowed in a quiet routine. In the morning, Elliot read to Ivy. In the afternoon, he sang or played the guitar, even if out of tune. At night, before leaving, he told stories, some real, some made up on the spot. "Remember when you were 3 and decided you wanted to sleep in the backyard?" he asked one sunny afternoon. "We set up a tent with sheets and pillows. You said you were going to count the stars, but you fell asleep before you got to 10. As he spoke, he watched his daughter's face. The reactions were subtle, but they were there. A slight sigh, an eyebrow raising, fingers twitching slightly. "I see you, Ivy," he whispered. "I know you're in there." Marley occupied a special place in that routine. Like an older sister, she took care of Ivy in her own way. She sang unknown songs, told stories about talking animals, and always brought something new to show. A bird's feather, a curiously shaped leaf, a shiny button found on the street. "Where do you find these things?" Elliot asked one day. "Around," she replied with her mysterious smile. "The world is full of treasures. You just have to pay attention." No one else asked about Marley's origin or where she slept at night. It was as if everyone tacitly understood that such questions would break the spell. She simply existed in room 318, between 9 in the morning and 8 at night, coloring the environment with her presence. The doctor said her vital signs are stronger, Elliot commented one Thursday afternoon. Marley, who was drawing on the floor, merely nodded without surprise. "Then it's because she's not afraid anymore." Afraid of what? Of waking up and finding out everything is still the same. Marley looked up from her drawing, but now she knows everything has changed. On Friday, they brought a small TV into the room. Not for watching shows, but for playing home videos Elliot found at home. Images of baby Ivy taking her first steps. Ivy on the swings in the park, laughing heartily. Ivy and Sarah making cookies in the kitchen, both covered in flour. "Your mom loved doing these things with you," Elliot commented. His voice choked as he saw his wife on the screen. As she always said, moments like these were worth more than anything money could buy. It was during one of these videos that it happened. Ivy cried, not just a solitary tear as before, but several, silently rolling down her motionless face. "Ivy," Elliot called, holding his daughter's hand. She squeezed his fingers in response, a conscious, deliberate squeeze. Marley approached the other side of the bed. "She's hearing everything," she said softly. "She always has been." That night, when it was time for Elliot to leave, he hesitated at the door. "I don't want to leave her alone." "She's not alone," Marley replied. "Even when no one is in the room, she knows you'll be back." The following days brought more reactions. A sigh when Elliot told something funny, a head movement when Marley sang, eyes darting rapidly under her eyelids during stories, as if Ivy was seeing everything in her mind. "It's like she's right at the surface," the nurse commented after checking the monitors. "I've never seen anything like it." Elliot just smiled. He knew what was happening. He didn't need medical explanations. On Saturday, he brought breakfast to eat beside Ivy, not the bland hospital food, but pancakes and fresh fruit from a nearby cafe. "I made pancakes just how you like them," he said, knowing the smell would fill the room. With lots of maple syrup. While eating, he told stories about the weekend they would have when she came home. Park outings, ice cream in the square, late-night cartoons. "And Marley can stay with us," he added, looking at the girl who was drawing sitting on the windowsill. Marley smiled, but said nothing, as if she knew something he didn't yet understand. In the afternoon, a storm gathered. Rain lashed against the window, creating dancing shadows on the room's colorful walls. Elliot picked up the guitar and played calm songs, while Marley made shadow puppets against the lamplight. It was at this moment that Ivy opened her mouth and sighed, a soft, almost imperceptible sound, but one that made Elliot and Marley freeze. "Did you hear that?" Elliot asked, barely breathing. Marley nodded, her eyes shining. "She's almost here," she whispered. Elliot put down the guitar and held his daughter's hand. "Ivy, I'm here. We're waiting for you." Her fingers moved within his, squeezing gently. It was no longer just a reflex. It was communication. On the wall opposite the bed, the drawing Marley had made, the three of them holding hands under the blue sky, seemed to glow in the late afternoon light. Like a promise slowly being fulfilled. That night, before leaving, Elliot kissed his daughter's forehead and whispered, "Tomorrow is another day, princess, and each day is bringing you closer to us." As he closed the door, he saw Marley sitting in the chair beside the bed, softly singing a lullaby. The street girl, who had appeared out of nowhere and changed everything, now seemed as much a part of that family as he was, and Ivy, between the two of them, was breathing more deeply, more present in the world with each passing day. An unlikely family, united by a love stronger than any blood tie. A simple routine, built not around obligations and schedules, but around stories, songs, and small gestures of affection, a cure no doctor could prescribe. Marley didn't appear on Tuesday morning, not at 9, not at 10. For the first time since she started visiting Ivy, the mysterious girl had broken her routine. Elliot felt a tightness in his chest. A child alone on the streets could encounter 1,000 dangers. Around 2 in the afternoon, the room door opened. Marley was there, but her normally lively face was pale and drawn. She stumbled in, leaning against the wall. "Marley!" Elliot rushed to her, holding her before she fell. "Well, Mum, what happened?" "Just a bit tired," she murmured, her voice weak. When Elliot touched her forehead, he felt the intense heat of a high fever. In minutes, Dr. Stevens was examining her. Fever of 103.1 degrees, severe dehydration, and clear signs of malnutrition, the doctor listed. "This child needs to be hospitalized immediately." "No," Marley protested. "So I have to stay with Ivy." "Ivy will be here when you get better," Elliot said, holding her hand. "Now it's you who needs care." Marley tried to resist, but soon lost consciousness. As they wheeled her away on a stretcher, the doctor explained, "She shows all signs of severe pneumonia, complicated by malnutrition. We'll do everything possible, but she's very weak." Over the next few hours, Elliot divided his time between Ivy's room and the pediatric waiting area. When he finally got to see Marley, she was unconscious, connected to monitors and an IV drip. For the first time, Elliot truly looked at her, not as the mysterious helper who appeared to save his daughter, but as a child, a little girl alone in the world, fighting to survive. He noticed details he had ignored before: her thin, calloused fingers, her bitten nails, her unkempt hair, her worn clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. "She has given everything and never received anything," he murmured to himself. Every day Marley appeared to take care of Ivy. She never asked for food, shelter, or attention for herself. Elliot never asked where she slept, what she ate, how she lived. When Marley opened her eyes, it was already night. "Where am I?" she asked, confused. "In the hospital. You're sick, but you'll be okay." She relaxed against the pillow, looking strangely small and vulnerable. "I've never slept in a bed like this," she murmured. "So soft, and the sheets smell good." "Where do you usually sleep?" "Wherever I can. Sometimes under the bridge, sometimes at the bus terminal." The simplicity with which she described such a harsh life left Elliot speechless. In the following days, he established a new routine. In the morning, he stayed with Ivy. In the afternoon, he visited Marley. At night, he returned to Ivy. On each visit, he brought books, drawings, stories. The bond between them grew stronger each day. On Thursday, the doctor informed him that Marley would be discharged the next day. "She needs follow-up care," he explained. "So we need to refer her to social services." "That won't be necessary," Elliot responded. "I will take care of her." "Mr. Granger, you are not related to her. Legally, you can't just take her." "Then tell me what I need to do to make it legal, because she's not going back to the streets." That afternoon, Elliot made countless calls to his lawyer, to social services, to acquaintances in government. For the first time, he used his power and influence for something beyond business. When he returned to Marley's room, she was drawing in a notepad. "We need to talk," he said, "about what happens when you leave here." She shrugged. "I go back to the street, and I keep visiting Ivy." "No, you're never going back to the street," Elliot declared. "When you leave here, you're coming to my house." Marley stared at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because I care about you. Because no child should live on the streets." "It won't work," she said softly. "Why not?" "Because people like you don't stay with people like me." The brutal simplicity of the phrase hit Elliot like a punch. It was the naked truth of the world, spoken by the mouth of a child. "That's not true, and I'm going to prove it to you." On Friday, Elliot picked up Marley. He had prepared a room for her at home, with new clothes, books, and drawing supplies. In the car, on the way home, Marley watched the city through the window. It was strange to see her there, in the passenger seat of the luxurious car. Two worlds that should never meet. For dinner, Elliot made macaroni and cheese. As they ate, he tried to start a conversation. "You never told me where you came from." Marley ate slowly, savoring each bite. "We lived in a small place, but it was she said. "My mom cleaned houses. At night, she told me stories. It was good." "What happened?" "One day, machines came. They said they were going to build a building. We had to leave." "They didn't offer you another place?" "They offered money. My mom said it was too little. We tried to rent a room, but the money ran out fast." Marley looked directly at him. "My mom got sick soon after. We lived on the street." She got very weak and one day she didn't wake up. When was that? 6 months ago, I think. It's hard to keep track of time on the street. Do you know which company built the building? Where was your house? In the East End, near the river. They called it Hopeville. Elliot felt a chill down his spine. Hopeville. The name stirred an uncomfortable memory. A stack of documents on his desk about a year ago. A major real estate project his company had financed. He remembered signing the authorization for the investment. He vaguely remembered someone mentioning expropriations, but that everything would be done legally. He remembered not asking anything else because he was late for a meeting. It was his company. The project that had driven Marley and her mother from their home. The project that, indirectly, led to her mother's death. He didn't know, but he signed. Is everything okay? Marley asked, noticing his expression. Yes, he lied. I'm just sad about what happened to you. Things happen. You can't change the past. Elliot nodded, unable to respond. Now the consequence of his actions had a name, a face, and real pain. It wasn't just a hastily signed document. It was Marley. It was her mother who never woke up. As they finished dinner in silence, Elliot made a silent promise. He couldn't change the past, as Marley said. But he could change the future. And perhaps, somehow, that would begin to balance the scales. Power for something beyond business. When he returned to Marley's room, he found her sitting on the bed, drawing in a pad he had brought. We need to talk, he said, pulling up a chair. Marley looked up from her drawing, those dark eyes that seemed to see right through people. About what? About what happens when you leave here tomorrow, she shrugged, feigning indifference. I go back to the street. Can't I keep visiting Ivy if you let me? No. The firm reply made Marley look at him in surprise. No what? You're never going back to the street, Elliot declared, leaving no room for argument. When you leave here, you're coming to my house. Marley was silent for a long moment. Why? Because I care about you. Because you matter to Ivy. Because no child should live on the streets. Many children do. And that doesn't make it right. Marley lowered her eyes to the drawing in her lap. It was a house with a colorful garden, the kind of drawing any normal child would make, the kind of dream she probably never allowed herself to have. It won't work, she said softly. Why not? Because people like you don't stay with people like me. The brutal simplicity of the phrase hit Elliot like a punch. It was the raw truth of the world they lived in, spoken by a child who already understood society's invisible divisions. That's not true, Marley, and I'm going to prove it to you. On Friday, Marley was discharged. Elliot had spent the morning at home, preparing a room for her. He wasn't sure what a 9-year-old girl would like, so he opted for the basics, a comfortable bed, new clothes in the closet, some books, and drawing supplies. When he returned to the hospital to pick her up, he brought a simple dress and a pair of new sneakers. I thought you'd want clean clothes, he explained, handing her the package. Marley touched the fabric of the dress as if it was something precious. It's pretty, she said. Can I really keep it? Of course, it's yours. She changed in the restroom and came out looking like a different child. The blue dress highlighted her olive skin tone. Her hair, washed during her hospitalization, fell in dark curls over her shoulders. Without the dirt and torn clothes, Marley was a beautiful girl. Before they left, they stopped by Ivy's room. We'll visit her tomorrow, Elliot promised, as Marley said goodbye to her motionless friend. Every day, just like before. In the car, on the way home, Marley was silent, watching the city through the window. It was strange to see her there, in the passenger seat of the luxurious car, like two worlds that should never meet, but were now intertwined by extraordinary circumstances. It's big, she commented when they arrived at Elliot's house. Too big for just one person, he admitted. Since Sarah, my wife, died, and Ivy's been in the hospital, I haven't spent much time here. He showed Marley around the house, the spacious living room, the modern kitchen, the backyard with a pool. Finally, the room he had prepared for her. This is your space now, he said, opening the door. Marley entered slowly, as if fearing everything would disappear if she touched it. She ran her hand over the soft bedspread, opened the dresser drawers, looked out the window overlooking the garden. How long can I stay? As long as you want, as long as you need. She looked at him with those eyes that seemed much older than her child's body. So what if Ivy doesn't wake up? The question caught Elliot by surprise. It was something he himself feared, but didn't dare to put into words. Ivy will wake up, he said with a firmness he didn't feel. But even if it takes longer than we expect, your place is still here. For dinner, Elliot prepared macaroni and cheese, nothing fancy, but it was Ivy's favorite dish. He imagined Marley would like it too. As they ate at the large dining room table, Elliot tried to start a conversation. You never told me where you came from, Marley. She ate slowly, savoring each mouthful as if it were something rare. From a place far from here. Your parents? My mom died. My dad left before I was born. Elliot wanted to ask more, but he feared touching open wounds. To his surprise, it was Marley who continued speaking. We lived in a small place, but it was ours, she said, her gaze distant as if seeing something beyond the walls of the house. It wasn't pretty like here, but it had everything we needed. My mom cleaned houses. At night, she told me stories. It was good. What happened? Marley pushed the macaroni around on her plate. One day, machines came. They said they were going to build a building. We had to leave. The simplicity of the phrase hid a tragedy. Elliot knew this kind of story well. Expropriations, forced evictions, entire communities displaced in the name of progress. They didn't offer you another place to live. They offered money. My mom said it was too little to buy anything. We tried to rent a room, but the money ran out fast. Marley looked directly at Elliot. My mom got sick soon after. We lived on the street. She got very weak. And one day, she didn't wake up. There was something in the way Marley spoke, without tears or drama, that made the story even more devastating, as if she had accepted that life was simply like that for people like her. When was that? 6 months ago, I think. It's hard to keep track of time on the street. 6 months, an eternity for a child alone. 6 months surviving day after day, with no one to care for her. Do you know which company built the building? Where was your house? In the East End, near the river. They called it Hopeville. Elliot felt a chill down his spine. Hopeville. The name stirred an uncomfortable memory. He remembered a stack of documents on his desk. About a year ago, a major real estate project his company had financed. Something about urban revitalization, new commercial developments, area appreciation. He remembered signing the authorization for the investment. He vaguely remembered someone mentioning that there would be expropriations, but that everything would be done legally. He remembered not asking anything else because he was late for an important meeting. It was his company, the project that had driven Marley and her mother from their home, the project that indirectly led to her mother's death and left a child alone on the streets. He didn't see, he didn't know, but he signed. Elliot felt his stomach churn. He wanted to say something, confess, ask for forgiveness, but the words got stuck in his throat. How to explain to a child that he was part of the machine that destroyed her life? Is everything okay? Marley asked, noticing his expression. Yes, he lied. Fadi, I'm just sad about what happened to you and your mom. Marley shrugged, with that acceptance that only those who have faced the worst of life possess. Things happen. You can't change the past. Elliot nodded, unable to respond. Her words, so mature for someone so young, were both a relief and an accusation. Now the consequence of his actions had a name, a face, and real pain. It wasn't just a hastily signed document, it was Marley. It was her mother who never woke up. It was everything this girl had lost and would never regain. As they finished dinner in silence, Elliot made a silent promise. He couldn't change the past, as Marley said, but he could change the future. Hers, Ivy's, and his own, and perhaps somehow that would begin to balance the scales. And then, where do you go when you leave here at night? Marley shrugged. Where I always have. To the streets. It's where I live. Elliot took a deep breath, making a decision that had been maturing since the moment he saw Marley collapse in Ivy's room. Not anymore, he said firmly. When you're discharged, you're coming to my house. Marley stared at him, surprised for the first time since he had met her. Why? Because you matter, Marley. Not just for what you did for Ivy, but for who you are. The girl's eyes, always so wise and distant, suddenly looked like the eyes of an ordinary child, scared, hopeful, and confused at the same time. "Can I really stay with you?" "You can," Elliot replied, holding her small hand. "It's about time someone took care of you too." That night, when Elliot returned to Ivy's room, he told his daughter what he had decided. "When you wake up, you'll have a surprise," he whispered, stroking her hair. "Marley is going to live with us. She won't have to be alone anymore." And for the first time, Elliot felt that he was truly understanding what it meant to be a father, not just to one, but perhaps to two girls who needed him. 2 weeks had passed since the revelation that shook Elliot. The discovery that his company was responsible for the eviction of Marley and her mother weighed on his shoulders like an impossible guilt to atone for. But, paradoxically, that painful truth had created a new bond between him and the girl. A connection forged in shared pain and the pursuit of redemption. The hospital routine continued. Every day, Elliot and Marley visited Ivy. The hospital room had transformed. Walls once white now displayed dozens of colorful drawings made by Marley, vases with fresh flowers on the bedside table, children's books piled in the corner, a small radio playing soft music. Doctors noticed subtle changes in Ivy, more brain activity, small movements in her hands and feet, reactions to voices and music. "These are positive signs," explained Dr. Roberts. "Brain activity is increasing, especially during your visits. Somehow, she is responding to your presence." "Will she wake up?" Elliot always asked, hope and fear mixed in his voice. "In medicine, we learn never to make promises," the doctor replied cautiously. "But we are seeing signs that usually precede awakening in cases like hers. It's a matter of time." Time, a word that meant something completely different to Elliot now. Before, time was something to be saved, optimized, converted into money and success. Now it was something to be invested in patience, in waiting, in small moments of hope. One Sunday morning, Marley woke up earlier than usual. When Elliot came down to the kitchen, she was already there, preparing coffee and toast. "You don't usually wake up this early on a Sunday," he commented, watching the girl move around the kitchen with unusual energy. "Today is an important day," Marley replied, placing a cup of coffee in front of him. "We need to go to the hospital earlier." There was something in her voice, a certainty, a contained urgency, that caught Elliot's attention. "Why? Did something happen?" Marley stopped what she was doing and looked directly at him. Her dark eyes, usually calm, had a different sparkle today. "She's going to wake up today," she said simply. Elliot felt a shiver run down his spine. It wasn't the first time Marley had shown to know things she shouldn't be able to know, but there was something in the conviction of her voice that left him breathless. "How can you be sure of that?" Marley shrugged, as if the question didn't make sense. "I just know. I saw it in my dreams." At any other time in his life, Elliot would have dismissed such a claim as childish imagination or magical thinking. But now, after everything they had been through, he didn't dare to doubt. "Then let's go," he agreed, finishing his coffee quickly. The hospital was quiet that Sunday morning. Nurses were changing shifts in low conversations. Cleaning staff wheeled their carts through the corridors. Some family members were already waiting at the reception for visiting hours to begin. As they entered Ivy's room, they found everything as always. The girl motionless on the bed, the constant beep of the monitors, the soft light entering through the window. "What do we do now?" Elliot asked after a few minutes of silence. Marley approached the bed. "We need to hold her, one on each side." Elliot positioned himself on one side of the bed, while Marley climbed onto a chair on the other side. Each took one of Ivy's small hands. "Talk to her," Marley instructed. "Tell her we're waiting." Elliot took a deep breath. The words came more easily now, after weeks of talking to his unconscious daughter. "Ivy, my love, and we're here, Marley and I, waiting for you to come back. There's so much I want to show you, so many places for us to go together. Your room is waiting for you, full of new toys, new books." As he spoke, Elliot observed his daughter's motionless face, looking for any sign of reaction. He noticed that Marley had closed her eyes, as if she were concentrating on something beyond that room, as if she were trying to reach Ivy somewhere he couldn't see or understand. After a few minutes, she opened her eyes. She leaned in and brought her lips close to Ivy's ear. "Imagine we're playing," she whispered, so softly that Elliot could barely hear it. "The day is beautiful." For a moment, nothing happened, only the sound of the machines and Ivy's gentle breathing. And then, a movement. Small, almost imperceptible. Ivy's fingers lightly closed around Marley's hand. Not an involuntary spasm, but a response. A connection. "Elliot," Marley called, her voice trembling. She squeezed my hand. No sooner had she spoken than Ivy's fingers also contracted around Elliot's hand. A light but definite squeeze. A conscious contact. "Ivy!" he called again, his voice choked. "Daughter, are you hearing us?" Ivy's eyelids trembled. A quick movement, as if she were trying to open her eyes against an enormous weight. "Keep talking," Marley encouraged. "She's trying." "We're here, my love. Marley and I, come back to us. Open your eyes, please. We've been waiting for you for so long." Her eyelids trembled again, and then slowly they began to open. First just slits, as if the light were too strong. Then a little more. Two brown eyes, just like Sarah's, blinked several times, trying to focus on the world around them. Confused, disoriented, but alive. So alive. "Ivy," Elliot called again, tears streaming freely down his face. Her eyes turned to him, confused at first, then with a flicker of recognition, of connection. "Daddy." Her voice was hoarse, almost inaudible after so long without use. "Yes, Princess, it's me." Elliot could barely speak through his tears. "You're back." Ivy blinked again, as if trying to understand where she was and what had happened. Then her gaze shifted to the other side, finding Marley. For a long moment, the two girls just looked at each other, a look filled with impossible recognition, inexplicable familiarity. "Who are you?" Ivy finally asked, her voice a little firmer. "I saw you in my dreams. We were playing." Marley smiled, a smile that lit up her entire face. "I'm Marley." "Marley," Ivy repeated, testing the sound of the name. "You took me to a garden with yellow flowers and a red swing," Marley completed, her eyes bright with emotion. Elliot looked from one to the other, marveling and confused. How could Ivy know Marley in her dreams? How could they share the same images, the same memories of places they had never been together? But those questions didn't matter now. What mattered was that his daughter was awake. After almost 2 months, Ivy had returned to the world of the living. Unable to contain his emotion, Elliot leaned in and carefully hugged his daughter, fearing he might hurt her. He felt her small body against his, her warm breath on his neck, the miracle of having his daughter back. "You scared me, my love," he whispered, holding her face in his hands. "But I'm here forever. Now I'm your real dad." Ivy's eyes, still sleepy, filled with tears. "Promise." "I promise. I'll never leave you alone again. I'll never put anything before you again." At that moment, the door opened and the nurse entered. Seeing Ivy awake, she dropped the tray she was carrying. "My God," she exclaimed, rushing to press the call button. "She's awake. I'll call Dr. Roberts immediately." The following days were a roller coaster of emotions and activities. Doctors came and went from the room, conducting exams, checking reflexes, asking questions. Everyone seemed impressed by Ivy's rapid recovery, the absence of permanent neurological damage, her intact memory. "It's extraordinary," commented Dr. Roberts, after a battery of tests on the 5th day. "Normally, patients who spend so much time in a coma show some cognitive or motor deficit, but she seems to be recovering perfectly." "Is it a miracle?" Elliot asked. "In medicine, we don't use that word," the doctor replied with a small smile. "But I must admit that, in 30 years of my career, I've never seen anything like it." Within a week, Ivy could sit up on her own in bed. In 10 days, she was taking her first hesitant steps around the room, supported by Elliot and Marley. Throughout this time, Marley never left Ivy's side. She slept at the hospital in a makeshift armchair. She ate there, drew there, lived there, and Ivy blossomed in her presence. The two talked for hours, shared stories, laughed at jokes only they understood. "It's like they've known each other for years," Nurse May commented to Elliot. "I've never seen anything like it." On the 12th day, the news came. Ivy could go home. "She will still need physical therapy and regular follow-ups," explained Dr. Roberts, "but recovery will be faster in a family environment." On the morning of discharge, Marley helped Ivy get dressed, a yellow dress with embroidered flowers, chosen especially for the occasion. She carefully combed her hair, talking softly about all they would do when they got home. "We'll paint your room whatever color you want," Marley said, as she brushed Ivy's golden hair. "And we can build blanket forts in the living room." "And cookies?" Ivy asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "As many as you can eat," Marley promised. Elliot watched from the doorway, marveling at the naturalness of that interaction. It was as if they had always been sisters, as if they had always belonged to each other. The car ride was peaceful. Ivy looked out the window with fascination, as if rediscovering the world. Marley held her hand, pointing out interesting things along the way. A dog in the park, a colorful shop window, the particularly blue sky that morning. "I always wanted a sister," Ivy commented suddenly, turning to Marley. Elliot, who was watching them both in the rearview mirror, felt a tightness in his chest. Amidst the joy of Ivy's awakening, the rush of hospital discharge, he hadn't had time to think about the future, about what would happen to Marley now. Legally, the situation was complicated. He had managed to get temporary guardianship, with the help of his lawyer and influential friends, but it was a provisional solution. For Marley to stay permanently, a full adoption process would be necessary. Looking at the two in the back seat, so naturally connected, Elliot knew what he had to do. "Now you have one," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Both of you do." The girls smiled, not fully comprehending the weight of that promise, but Elliot knew it was a lifelong commitment. A commitment to two children who needed him as much as he needed them. In the following months, many things changed. Elliot completely reorganized his professional life. He reduced his projects, delegated responsibilities, and began working primarily from home. The company struggled a bit at first, but soon adapted to the new model. And, surprisingly, Elliot discovered that he could be a successful businessman without sacrificing his personal life. He hired the best lawyers to formalize Marley's adoption. The process was complex, with a lot of bureaucracy and questioning. There were difficult moments, when social workers expressed doubts about Elliot's ability to raise two girls alone, or about his motivations for adopting Marley. "Don't you think you're trying to replace the daughter you almost lost?" a social worker asked during one of the home visits. "I'm not replacing anyone," Elliot replied firmly. "I'm expanding my family. I'm giving Marley what she deserves, a home, a family, a chance to be a child again." His determination finally paid off. 6 months after Ivy's awakening, the judge signed the papers. Marley Granger was officially his daughter. For Marley, it was as if she could finally breathe. After months living on the streets, after losing her mother, after believing she would never again have a place to call her own, she belonged to someone. She had a name, a home, a family. She had people who cared if she was hungry, cold, or scared. She had people waiting for her to come back. She had a place to come back to. The house, once silent and empty, now overflowed with life and laughter. Ivy and Marley were inseparable. They shared toys, clothes, bedtime stories. They argued sometimes, like all sisters, but made up quickly. One night, as he tucked the girls into bed, Elliot heard something that tugged at his heart. Ivy, almost asleep, turned to Marley in the bed next to her. "Good night, little sister," she murmured. "Good night, big sister," Marley replied in the same sleepy tone. Elliot stood in the doorway, soaking in that moment. Two children who had suffered immense losses, now finding comfort in each other. Two stories of pain that, hot together, formed a new story of hope. One Saturday morning, almost a year after Ivy's awakening, Elliot was making pancakes in the kitchen. Through the window, he saw the two girls playing in the backyard. Ivy, fully recovered, ran after Marley in a game of tag. Laughter filled the morning air. As he flipped the pancakes in the pan, he reflected on how his life had changed. Before, he lived in a rush, always late, always thinking about the next deal, the next meeting, the next million. Now he lived in the present, without hurry, with time to make pancakes on a Saturday morning. He was a father to 2 girls. One he almost lost due to his own negligence, the other whom fate placed in his path through a series of tragic coincidences. Coincidences that, looking back now, seemed almost planned. The aroma of pancakes began to spread through the house. Soon the girls would come running, hungry and happy. They would sit at the table, tell stories about their games, make plans for the rest of the day. A normal family, a happy family. Elliot knew he had been saved, not just from the despair of almost losing Ivy, but from an empty life that confused success with happiness. And his unlikely savior was a little girl the world had ignored, but whom he would never forget. Elliot knew he had been saved, not just from the despair of almost losing Ivy, but from an empty life that confused success with happiness. And his unlikely savior was a little girl the world had ignored, but whom he would never forget. 8 months had passed since Ivy's awakening. 8 months of recovery, adaptation, and discoveries. 8 months of a new life for everyone. Spring had arrived in all its fullness. The backyard, once well-maintained but lacking personality, now overflowed with colors. Daisies, tulips, and sunflowers grew in makeshift beds, planted by the girls themselves under Elliot's supervision. A red swing hung from a sturdy oak branch, identical to the one that appeared in Marley's drawings and Ivy's dreams. A coincidence Elliot had decided to turn into reality. On a particularly sunny Saturday morning, Elliot was preparing breakfast in the kitchen. Through the wide window, he watched his daughters playing in the backyard. Ivy ran barefoot across the grass, chasing Marley in a game whose rules only they knew. Her golden hair shone in the sun, her face was flushed from the effort, and her laughter filled the air like music. There were no longer any signs of the prolonged coma. Physical therapy, which was initially expected for months, became unnecessary in just 10 weeks. A rare case of complete recovery, the doctors had said, with that mixture of surprise and skepticism they reserved for cases that defied their expectations. Marley ran a few feet ahead, looking back occasionally to make sure Ivy was following her. Always careful, always protective, even during the most energetic games. Her hair, once dull and unkempt, now fell in shiny curls to her shoulders. Her clothes, new but simple, replaced the rags she wore when they first met. But what had changed most was the expression on her face. The constant look of caution giving way to a serenity that only security can bring. Elliot smiled as he flipped a pancake in the frying pan. The scene through the window was the perfect definition of happiness for him. Something no money could buy, no million-dollar contract could provide. The change in his life had been profound. After Ivy's recovery and Marley's official adoption, Elliot completely reorganized his priorities. He reduced his business involvement, delegating responsibilities he had once accumulated. He gave up international projects that would require frequent travel. He hired a CEO to manage the company's daily operations while he focused on strategic decisions that could be made from home, on his own time. His partners had protested at first. "So as you're throwing away everything you've built," they said. But Elliot knew better. He wasn't throwing anything away. He was gaining everything. The doorbell rang. It must be May, Ivy's former nurse, who occasionally visited on Saturdays. After caring for Ivy in the hospital for so long, she had become almost part of the family. "Girls, breakfast is almost ready," Elliot called through the window. "And May's here." The two stopped running and came toward the house, breathless and smiling. They entered through the back door like a small hurricane of energy, filling the kitchen with their vibrant presence. "Dad, Marley taught me how to do somersaults," Ivy announced, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I managed to do 3 in a row." "And she didn't even get dizzy," Marley added, with evident pride in her sister. "Impressive," Elliot replied, genuinely admiring. Just a few months ago, doctors recommended caution with more intense physical activities. Now Ivy was doing somersaults in the backyard like any healthy child. "But please wash your hands before breakfast and see who's here." The girls ran to the living room, where shouts of joy announced their meeting with May. Elliot finished preparing the pancakes, stacking them on a large plate. He added fresh strawberries, maple syrup, and a generous portion of whipped cream, a luxury reserved for weekends. As he set the table, he thought about how his life had changed. Before, Saturdays were dedicated to emergency meetings, important phone calls, contract reviews. He lived in a constant rush, always thinking about the next problem to solve, the next goal to achieve. Now, he lived in the present, without hurry, with time to watch his daughters grow, to make pancakes on a Saturday morning, to appreciate the sun streaming through the kitchen window. He was a father to two extraordinary girls. One he had almost lost due to his own negligence. The other whom fate had placed in his path through a series of coincidences that, in retrospect, seemed almost planned. May entered the kitchen, followed by the girls. Her gentle smile was the same as during her nursing days, but casual clothes replaced the hospital uniform. "It's a wonderful day out there," she commented. "And these pancakes look delicious. Made especially for 4 hungry people," Elliot replied, pulling out a chair for her. As everyone sat at the table, Elliot observed the scene with a sense of fulfillment that still surprised him. His table, once occupied only by work papers or solitary meals, now accommodated a family. An unlikely family, formed not by blood ties, but by choices, coincidences, and perhaps a touch of destiny. Conversation flowed naturally during breakfast. Ivy talked about her new storybook. Marley showed her latest drawings. May commented on her new job in the pediatric ward. Elliot participated, but also allowed himself to simply observe, absorb, silently give thanks for every moment. After May said goodbye, promising to return next weekend, Elliot and the girls decided to enjoy the sunny day with a picnic in the park. As they prepared the basket with sandwiches and fruit, Ivy asked a question that caught Elliot by surprise. "Dad, how did you and Marley meet?" Elliot and Marley exchanged a look. They had never told Ivy the full story. How to explain to a 5-year-old that Marley lived on the streets, that her father's company had indirectly caused her mother's death? "Marley appeared when you were sleeping at the hospital," Elliot replied, opting for a simplified version. "How she came to visit you and was able to help you wake up." "Like a guardian angel?" Ivy asked, with the simple logic of children. "Something like that," Elliot agreed, looking at Marley with a grateful smile. Marley lowered her eyes in a rare moment of shyness. Even after so many months, she was still surprised when someone recognized her importance. "It wasn't just me," she said softly. "It was all 3 of us together." Later, as the girls ran through the park, Elliot sat on a bench in the shade of a tree. Watching his daughters play, he felt that familiar wave of gratitude. Life had given him a second chance. A chance to be the father Ivy deserved. A chance to give Marley the home she never had. A chance to discover that success wasn't measured by bank accounts or signed contracts, but by moments like this. He knew he had been saved, not just from the despair of almost losing Ivy, but from an empty life that confused success with happiness. A life where he accumulated possessions, but lost what truly mattered. And his improbable savior had been a little girl the world had ignored. A child who had lived in the shadows, invisible to the society that should protect her. A girl who, despite losing everything, still had so much to give. Marley Granger, his daughter. The girl no one saw, but whom he would never forget. "Our dad will come play with us," Ivy called, waving from the open field where she and Marley had started a game of tag. Elliot smiled and stood up. There was work waiting at home, emails to answer, decisions to make. But all of that could wait. The moment was now, the moment was theirs, and he wouldn't miss a second of it.